which is almost the end of this wonderful year, 2022. I don't know about you, but I think the world has gone a little bit crazy, but in some ways we've actually come back to some sanity from 2000. But it's nice to click over that 2022 to 2023 year. So thank you for taking the time to join us here as we usually go through. I'm actually going to back out of this. Give me 60 seconds here. You gotta love new tech. So for those of you that are not aware, we're actually running ClearWeb, which is a brand new browser. This technology is, Google does everything they can to try and limit some of the access to it. But for those that are aware, we're actually replacing Google with both the email, calendar, contacts, docs, sheets, and presentations all in one fell swoop, which we look forward to bringing that to you here in the short term. But again, we're talking about this is a ripple effect. It's a ClearUnited meeting every Tuesday. We were thinking about and contemplating not having it this week as it's kind of an off week, but we voted last week and everyone said, no, let's hold it. So here we are. We're going to focus primarily 30 minutes on some of the new advancing tools, technologies over the prior week, and then also about 30 minutes just on general questions, topics that anyone may have. This is primarily focused for ClearUnited members. Some of the co-hosts here with me today, Elle, thank you. Wally, thank you. Terrence has actually just sent a message earlier. He's going on vacation for 2 weeks starting now. So we appreciate all of his help, and then had some wonderful interactions with John over the last 24, 48 hours. But if you have support related questions, feel free to reach out to those individuals. Otherwise, the topics we'll be discussing here are basically technology as well as decentralization and how it can actually impact humanity. We're grateful for those that are taking their time on multiple different channels, from YouTube to Twitter to LinkedIn, as well as on ClearOne and Facebook. So if you're on ClearOne, you can actually ask questions, but primarily we're grateful for those that are taking time to understand and then be understood, as Mr. Covey used to say. This is a private membership association, so the content herein is protected. There may be forward-looking statements that we discuss. We're primarily talking about a model combining a phone storage as well as the future of collaboration and community for humanity. I know that may sound pretty broad, but when you start understanding the impacts and reaches that this can have, you'll understand how important it is. And for the time and questions, the smart questions that always get asked every single week and month as we go through these ripple effects and digital town hall meetings. So the strategy is simple. We basically take an access device, a new type of device, or even link into existing devices such as Apple and Android devices and tie that into decentralized storage. So the user actually gets a simple code like this when they sign up, they fill it out. That is their private key. Some people are still asking, what is a private key and how does it work? And we'll talk a little bit about that. As you know, we're really on the adoption curve beginning. So a lot of it is education based. So these are basically the elements. So again, combining phone with storage as it links into a strategy around combining a network that's decentralized into a phone that's decentralized. It's just that simple. A lot of people may say, well, I still don't understand. And when you actually use it, you'll start to understand. But please log on to rippleeffect.clear.events if you want to ask live questions, as that is one of 3 or 4 different venues that we're streaming this live on. We will look at some of the chats in the other venues. So if you want to pop it in, you can. But know that, let's see if anybody's, yeah, so nobody's got anything in those other chats. But if you've got it, feel free to ask. We'll do our best to try and get both YouTube chats, Twitter chats, LinkedIn chats, Facebook chats, as well as ClearOne. But ClearOne is actually where majority of the action happens. And this is URL, rippleeffects.clear.events. Well, first off, I don't know about you, but I'd like to say thank you for a wonderful year. The loyalty, the commitment has been just overwhelming. The individuals that really see what's happening in humanity and the division, and see the ability to be able to replace a lot of the fear with hope and faith around a better way, around a way that I believe, if the founding fathers of this wonderful country, the United States of America, which started the first Declaration, then the first Constitution, then all other countries, not all, but majority of the other countries, well over 150 other countries, actually started adopting their own, not necessarily declaration, but at least their own constitution. I believe that those individuals, if they were alive today, these are the types of things they would be doing. Why can I say something like that? Because when we look at every single voting ecosystem inside the United States, it's actually decentralized to the county layer, not to the state layer, not to a district or a region or some other way of measuring things, which we've come up with over the years, but to the county layer. The authority has been disseminated to the sheriff to keep the peace. The authority for identity, for voting, for marriage, for health has all been pushed to the county layer. And I believe that these founding fathers not only saw a simple thing around taking a country like the United States of America and decentralizing authority to a county, but it's bigger than that. There are true and correct principles when we talk about decentralization. I'm going to pull up a quick slide that kind of goes through what that really is. So it's taking centralized authority or power that's usually hierarchically in structure and giving it to the masses. So everyone has their own ability to actually choose, to have a voice, to vote, to self-govern themselves as they see fit within their own ecosystem, as long as they're not hurting others, right? In the Constitution, it talks specifically about how a contract should not be null and void or violated between one party and another, whether that's an individual or a business to a business or an individual to an individual. Literally, that privacy, that protection, that governance was intended for the individual to actually have autonomy over their life, whether that is to practice whatever religion and belief that they wanted to, or whether that was like the Second Amendment, to bear a weapon, to bear an arm, to provide sovereignty and peace to their own neighborhood, so to speak, to their own family, to their own individual life. And that decentralized, I mean, if you take what we talk about with decentralized and you just look at it, we've talked about this before, through a microscope, going down to the cellular layer, and how our own beings, our own bodies have the ability to reproduce in such a way where it continues to keep going. And hopefully over time, it continues to improve, continues to get better. Whether it's not, it's a physical attribute, could be a simple gene. A choice could be something, even choices can improve generation over generation. And environments, those environments, genes, and actually choices are the three things that, from my perspective, actually make us the individuals that we are. But at the same time, decentralization is not just something you look down in a microscope and see how a cell is going to act. What's crazy is humanity is already starting to mess with, I want to take this type of chromosome or DNA sequence and move it to here. So like, for instance, with one of the things they actually do this most often with, guess what it is? Fruit flies. So they'll actually take fruit flies because the gestational period is so small, and they can take antennas from the front of it and stick it on the rear, or simple things like that, where they're modifying things that are God-given gifts around decentralization at the cellular layer. And I don't want to confuse folks, but I'm trying to give you an example around why decentralization is so imperative for humanity and why it is so natural in how we all exist. For instance, instead of looking through a microscope, look up through a telescope and you'll see lots of systems, whether they're galaxies, whether they're planets, whether they're stars, and how far can we see? And are we just being able to see with just our eyes, or the glass within that microscope or within that telescope? And so I guess the point being is decentralization leveraged around technology is really why we're having this call, and why we believe that a lot of the pains that are going on were really the attacks to the body. And I'll go through these secret combinations. There's different ecosystems, whether it's, an attack on the body, the family, or even this wonderful earth, they're coming through different ecosystems. Technology is one of them. That's the one we're primarily focused on counterbalancing. Media is another one. Health, including things like pharma. And there's tons of other ecosystems. And most of them, whether we're talking about finance, we're talking about, there's so many. Banking sits inside of finance, but ultimately we believe that they've literally taken over governmental ecosystems. And the way to be able to counterbalance this fight for control, especially in this new digital regime and era, is through decentralization. So we appreciate you that have tuned in. Literally, I don't know if you understand the history or time frame that we've been working on this, but all the way back till 2009. And really, that's not the beginning of decentralization. We can see it many, many decades prior. You know, we appreciate those that have dedicated their time and their life, especially when they've done it in such a consecrated way where they're giving away really what normal society would want to actually wrap up as intellectual property. Let's put a patent on it. Let's lock this up. Let's create a barrier to entry. Let's make it so others can't actually do this. And that's not what the law of consecration is. The law of consecration is everyone owns it. Everyone can basically build on it. Everyone can control it. But there's certain folks that will actually continue to develop. And if they develop in a true and correct direction based upon what the masses want, just like this meeting today, we haven't missed a Tuesday in over 2 years. There was one time we had it, it was half of it because we lost a connection, but literally every single Tuesday, it was like, do we want to have another meeting? Why? Because this next year, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to change. And I'll kind of go through some of the things that are changing. One, the meeting structures. We'll talk about that this next year as we kick the first meeting off. Two, the structure around how ClearUnited actually works. Three, the Clear Prime memberships. Those are all going to almost double in price. So if you want it, now's your chance. And then four, it's actually, I want to say it's over here. I can pull it up real fast before we wrap up. I also want to talk a little bit about, there's a discount on any of the Clear phones between now and the end of the year that's consistent with the 23% off that all those folks had been asking for. So that's still consistent there. So please take advantage of that while you can. But all of these things will end up shifting between now and the end of the year. Also want to thank those that have been involved with any of the what we call WIG sessions, or wildly important goals, that will continue. They've gone on since 2005. There'll be a key one again tomorrow, and we'll share some of these wildly important goals, basically netting out what is the one thing that matters for this next year, or nothing else matters if we don't get it done. And that's what we'll be focusing on between now and the end of the year, and then reporting to the masses what that basically is. So those are the topics kind of in general. There are some advancements on, and for those of you that have not logged in, before I log in, I'm actually going to show you, if you come into different councils. So I'm just going to click on, this is the first version of the Digital World website, by the way. This is what's live. There's a whole new site that's going to go live here in the next couple of weeks. But basically, if you click into it, you can see a register for council. This is brand new, and this is what we've been telling you about that's coming. But you can literally find a council that you think you can add value on. Education, you can see there's not a lot of people there, or maybe health, maybe that's a forte or focus that you have in your world. And you can literally just click on it, and it pops up a QR code. For those of you that actually have a Clear phone, and I should probably show, even if you don't have a Clear phone, you can still do this. So if you go into clearos.app, there is a place, and this is for Android phones, all Android phones that are not Clear phones, so to speak, and you can search for Digital Life. When you search for Digital Life, this is basically a similar version of Clear Life, but you can see here, this will work on almost any Android device. So when you download it, that'll give you the ability to actually get 12 words, so your master private key, and then you can start managing your own data and your own life. But what's really important is when you can actually log in and you can scan and actually verify something that you want to do. Now, what's beautiful, this scan that happens from it actually occurs when, I don't know how that just happened. Did somebody scan that? No?
Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Like, that shouldn't have just gone away. So that's the session here, and that's a security on how people can actually go ahead and scan these different ecosystems. For instance, we got Don that's joined us. Don, it's sure is good to see you, buddy. You would definitely be in the Health Council right here, right? So, you would come in, you would scan this, and what it would do is when you actually log in, it would automatically know that you've been requesting or are nominated to basically join this health council. There's a process of how the individuals join the councils and how the councils actually get created. And this process is actually replacing governance as humanity currently knows it. Humanity currently knows governance from a couple different things. One, colonialism. So for instance, a certain country, maybe Spain, maybe France, maybe England, back in the day, a couple hundred years ago, would have boats that would have sailors on them, and they would go discover the world, what they thought they could control. And as they discovered this world, they would stick their flag on it. They would stick their new name on it. New Caledonia is a good example of a new name. New Zealand is a good example of a new name. New Hernandez these are all brand new names that were given to them within the last couple centuries. These councils replace that experience. So when they went onto these new lands, imagine tribes that are actually, usually what they would do, and it's beautiful, you can see it in so many different indigenous communities. The Chickasaws, the Cherokees, the Maoris are one of the best examples. The folks in Vanuatu is a great example. The folks in Fiji. These are all ecosystems that were thousands and thousands of years in existence prior, some of them up to 4,000 years prior. And they had no king. They had no queen. They had no president. But most of them, and again, this is not about pushing religion, but most of them recognized the hand of a creator, or what some would call Elohim or God or Judea, you name it. And we're not talking about people and how it's kind of disseminated from there, from Muhammad and others, or even Christ. What we're talking about is how individuals, it goes right back to this little diagram, this simple diagram of decentralization, of how instead of having one governing ecosystem, people can actually become sovereign again. They can actually control their own life, their own identity, their own data, their own finance, their own assets, their own businesses, their own disputes. It can go on and it's endless. And what I'm going to do real quick is I will log in. I'll just grab a new window. I will actually log in here. So I'm opening ClearLife, which is a decentralized app on my Clear phone. I'm going to click on scan QR code, and then I'm just going to mouse over this top button. Let's see if I can get that there. It might be too sideways. Okay. So I basically have just logged in without using my fingerprint, my username, or my password. It's a process to log into the digital world, but it knows what's actually been created. So these could be looked at like businesses. For instance, there's a gentleman on here who we actually created this business by just, I'm actually gonna have to look around here real fast. Where do we create? The developers are awesome. This is all changed up. Okay, no, I was in the wrong window. So if I come in and I actually want to go and create, notice you'll see some additional things here. So you can create a company and you can create much more. You can create a DAO. You can create a trust. You can create a society. You can name it. One of the biggest requirements that you have is you just have to have a location in the digital world. A location being a URL like www.xyz.com. Now, .com can be replaced by many of the other top level domains, which is like 430 of them out today. But the point is that is actually your digital world location. The jurisdiction is the whole planet, the whole Earth. So think about it this way. In the United States of America, there's a thing called UCC law, Universal Communication Code. This is actually how assets are either managed or taken or controlled. But this is actually something that each state, except, and all of them have done it except for Louisiana, since the Constitution was put into place, this was something that was adopted later on. And 95% of all the different states are now using it, even though it's not built into the Constitution. And it spans all, it basically standardizes rights. Imagine a digital world where cryptography and technology can actually be running a process that can't stop, it won't shut down, it won't change unless councils, like what we talked about prior, unless these councils actually come in and say, you know what, we need to change a policy, we need to change a right, we need to document it a different way, we need to flow it a different way. Those are the types of examples, and there's so much more. I mean, it's like what we've talked about before. Half the battle of life is learning what question to ask. The rest of it is doing whatever you wanted to do with what the answer to the question is, right? And this is really the future. When we talk about the future, it's exactly what, let's see if we can get it, exactly what this says. A new millennium, so 1,000 years of sovereignty, privacy, health, and unity for all people, for all humanity. So that's the target, that's the goal, that's the objective. Now, who today actually manages those different ecosystems? These are non-self-governing territories, but what other, so we're talking about, it goes back to those countries, the Spains, the Frances, the Englands of the world that basically went out and conquered through forms of colonialism to actually control. A good example, let's just take one of them, what England / the Brits did with Canada, with New Zealand, with Australia. You could argue with New Caledonia. Well, that's French. They were just booted out. Same thing. I don't know if you saw what happened this last week within the Philippines. No, not the Philippines, within Fiji. And by the way, if you really go back to the roots of what these countries' names are, for instance, in New Zealand is what we all know is the most recent country to be controlled or domiciled. But really, it's Aotearoa. It's not New Zealand. Aotearoa is what it was called before. And the people own the land. And when we look at these other parts of the world that come in and provide control, you have to ask yourself, is it for the good of humanity? And there's a couple things that we use as litmus tests for that. For instance, if everyone did it, would it be good for humanity? And then you just test it. Would that be a positive thing? If everyone had a garden, would that be good for humanity? Some people are like, I live out of a hotel. I don't grow a garden. I'd love to. I like plants. I think there's an innate connection with plants or flowers or herbs, but that's a different subject. But my point is try and throw something out there. So for instance, and I'm not taking a place or a side on this, but if all of us ended up liking our own gender, what would that do to humanity? And when I say liking, I'm talking about connecting, cohabitating, marrying. Just throw it out there. I'm not taking sides, not saying it's right or it's wrong, because we all have our own choices. We all have our own chapters too. Sometimes, we say, procreation and multiplying and replenishing is a part of what is the fabric of who we are. And there's a time for it and then, a chapter for it. For instance, we talked about throughout these last couple of years, we talked about 3 phases of life. The first phase where we're learning, the first 25 years. The second phase where we're actually really growing or building. So sometimes we're accumulating, but we're adding value in such a way where we're actually making, in some ways it's wealth, and in many other ways it's got nothing to do with wealth. Maybe it's posterity or kids. Then the third phase where we're actually trying to help give that back and train those next generations on it. And that life cycle of life, the goal is through life cycles and multiple different lifespans, how we as individuals or families or humanity can actually improve. And when you take that as the litmus test and say, hey, could these different generations of actual improvement on genes, like we talked about, on the environment, like we talked about, and on choices? Because remember, different questions and different dispensations beg different choices, and then we have different answers to them. So genes, choices, and environment. And for instance, you can actually choose to change your environment, right? Maybe it's cleaning up a desk. Maybe it's moving to a different home. Maybe it's moving to a different, I don't know about you, but right now there's some crazy weather going on out there. We'd have to ask ourselves why, right? Maybe not. Maybe that's a whole nother topic. You can bring it up in your questions if you want to. But, we're seeing a lot of things around us shift. And I would say that's a part of what the third attack is. Remember, we talked about these attacks. The individuals under attack, their identity, who they are, what they are, the family, probably one of the most important units ever, the family, and then this earth. I don't know about you, but I saw some crazy videos of hail down in Australia. we're talking in the middle of when it should be nice and warm and hot, and we're talking hail that's that thick. So we'll talk about those three different attacks in future dialogue. But I hope what you're understanding is this decentralization, not just with a phone, but with identity and other systems. And I'm going to pull up some of the other systems. This will be the first time that this body's seen it. This is some of the stuff that will actually go live for next year. And here they are. This is a brand new web page. Notice how we talk about, it's not just about a new millennium, because we're already there. This new millennium has actually started. But we're talking about governance for humanity. So where countries can actually self-select. Countries can literally say, we want to do it a different way. We don't want to just follow through with what Captain Cook put as the flag and as our name and as this prime minister shall do this. This ministry of health and ministry of justice and ministry of this and ministry of that shall do these things. They want to actually go back to what was working prior. The tribalism was working. As much as white man wants to stick their flag where either it was welcome or not welcome, we can see what's happening in society with the centralized control, with the centralized banking, with the centralized media, with the centralized technology. It's literally, it's worse than suffocating. And a lot of people don't see it. Some people are starting to. But as we go down through it, we're really talking about the world's reset, at least the global reset that's not the World Economic Forum, WEF. It's not what the United Nations was about. It's about following a simple decentralized process that humanity can roll out on their own without any kind of governance or people in the middle of it controlling them. They can do with it what they want. We're talking about countries and nations and communities from around the world adopting a declaration of unity, a new declaration of unity that I believe is just as important as the Declaration of Independence. If you haven't read it, go to governance and then click on, let's see. Yeah, you want the web address. Let me see. I won't be able to get it here. Let me jump back over here. So if you want the web address to that, you come here, you come here. Let's see if I might be logged in. There we go. So I'll drop that in on Clear One, as well as on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Okay, so everyone should have that. If you haven't read this, please read it. Start right here where it says Declaration of Unity. Don't get confused between this with this new word. This is a brand new word. Who says that, words don't get created, but it means something. You can kind of read that above. But please take the time to read this if you haven't already, because that's what this is all based on. This is not philosophies mingled with historical data. This is looking at what's important for humanity today and projecting out for the next millennium. We're not talking about a couple decades or a couple centuries. We're talking at least 1,000 years. So think about that when you read through this document, okay? So I'm going to jump back over here. There's a lot that goes into this, primarily around indigenous communities. Why? Because they're really our best example of what has historically actually worked. And what I mean by that is these societies have actually, for instance, you could take a society, I don't want to be specific with specific names, but you could take, let me see if I can get back to this. And I don't want to use China as one of the examples either. China, Africa, and I don't want to be specific with some of these countries' names because we're working with them. But imagine countries that go back 3,000, 4,000 years. They can prove that they've been around that long. Okay, they can prove how they operated. Did the people smell maybe differently than the sailors? Probably not than the sailors, but probably different than folks that actually took a bath every day. But what's the definition of cleanliness? For instance, I'm one of those freaks that I love to be clean, love to take a bath, can't stand it. Like if like I grew up in an ecosystem. Well, yeah, this is a good analogy. So I'm trying to turn on lights around. Is it ever right for us to judge one another around what someone else may actually look like, or what they may smell like, or what they may do? Are we really their judge to say this should be done in a different way? Or maybe, hey, here's an opportunity for you to see a different way, but for you to still make a choice for you, for your posterity, for your family. And in many different ecosystems, they have a hierarchical structure that is very decentralized. So it's what we're talking about, but it is based upon a region. It's based upon, you could even say it like the Hutterites community, okay? So Hutterites communities basically are 10 families on average. They work together, they live in a similar type ecosystem. When they get so big, then they duplicate and create another community. But they have certain belief systems, they have certain, and if people inside of it don't believe, they also have certain ways that they can transgress out and back in. But the key is giving choice and freedom to the core of it. Look at the Kuna Indians on the east coast of Panama. This is 75,000 people that have never been taken their sovereignty. Their sovereignty has never been stolen from them. When the Spaniards came in and took this part of South America and that part, you know, the Incas, the Mayans, these different populations that were just decimated, the Kuna Indians weren't. So are they worse? Are they better because they're sovereign, because they're separate? Do they live from the land? Do they sell the land? Do they leverage the land? Did they allow the land to be taken? Is the land a part of them? Do they identify that the land was a God-given gift to them? Do they take stewardship over it? Do they believe that their sovereignty is worth dying over? All these different questions are a part of why when we talk about these indigenous ecosystems, and for those who have not seen Phil Lane, I'm not going to play him again because I always play him because I love playing him, but Phil Lane Jr., he'll be a definite part of this. It's a little bit different video, but it's basically a world that is powered by the people, not by corporations, not by centralized systems. Does that make sense? So literally, it's not by centralized systems. Everything that we know today that's in a digital fashion in one way or another can be using artificial intelligence or machine learning can actually be linked up together. I know that on one hand, it may be hard to understand. On the other hand, it's very, very real. Let me give you an example. Equifax. That knows where you've lived. And this doesn't just count for Americans. They want to just say this is only Americans. People in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Japan, it doesn't relate. Like just so, yeah, I'll just stop right there. But all I'm saying is there's a database that is actually tracking identifiers around a name, a date of birth, and other identifiers, maybe an address, maybe a phone number, maybe an email. And you know what? The email address can change. The phone number can change. The address can change. A social security number can change. And their name can change. We call it as specifically, a gentleman named Richard Dick calls it the Maria Gonzalez problem, where 24 little babies named Maria Gonzalez were born in the same Orange hospital on the same day. So these little babies actually have the same name and on the same day. So how throughout life do they track them? Well, in the United States, they like to say, hey, your mom signs this birth certificate as an affidavit. They're basically informing that this baby now gets a social security number, and that social security number becomes the tertiary or the third identifier. So you could say, well, if you're going to link the social security number to the name and the date, that's the difference identifier, right? It goes so much deeper than that. And what decentralization does is it literally lets the individual validate and verify who they are, where they've been, what they've done, even if they change their name, even if they change their address or their phone number or their email. But imagine the 12 words. Remember these little words that you write down. The combination of that with your fingerprint, which by the way can actually be rebuilt in very intuitive ways in the future. And it doesn't have to link just off of decentralized phones. It can link off of, in the future, any phone. And many of you have probably said, you know what? I love my Clear phone, or I love my Freedom phone, or I love my Armor phone. But imagine if there were new types of phones that come out, and the phones are doing what they're currently doing. They have different, apps that get pre-installed. They've got different focus points. They've got different ecosystems and operating systems. But what's common is they're decentralized. These new decentralized phones actually give you the 12 words, right? And again, if you're working with Apple or you're working with Android, you can still get an app that can basically enable you into that ecosystem. Next, it will be Android. Here, I'll show you the next screen. So you can get Android, you can get Digital Life that'll work on Android. But then what if people are on an Apple phone? We'll talk about that in the future. We won't discuss that today. But imagine this digital world enables people to create companies that are decentralized. So just like I logged into that web interface, so let's see if I can see it again. So I can see that I can create a company, and I've actually logged in decentralized. I can create a company, and then what if I could actually create not just a digital company, but I could link it to a physical country or ecosystem. So some of these are countries, some of these are provinces, some of these are states. Imagine you can actually link it physically and virtually to these different ecosystems. And you actually verify your identity by doing a scan again, okay? So most of you have already seen this, how you can log in with your decentralized entity, you can create a digital organization, and in the side of that digital organization, you can also create a digital asset. And the assets can basically manage everything in life, from a home, an apartment, land, vehicles, or maybe if you want to take a business, what the current ecosystem would take certain securities public, you could do that as well. But it takes you through a workflow that helps you to comply with whatever your local registration laws are. Maybe, or if you don't have them, that's also another topic as well. Maybe it's infrastructure. Maybe it's a country that says, you know what, we want to invest in resources, import, export, GDP, laws, roads, etc. We want to tokenize assets. We want to say, you know what, these trees are valuable. What's over the earth in the waves, the frequencies are valuable. What's in the soil is valuable. Let's say that it's a wonderful little island that has pretty big jurisdiction. And you know what they're actually getting? Some of the most valuable assets that we all use? Lithium ion phosphate batteries. What if I told you that majority of the actual minerals are under the ocean? And by just snag it under the ocean, and there's a whole nother conversation around rights and protection and attack to the earth. But my point is the ability to actually represent value and transfer value, whether it's a commodity, equity, or currency, is really what's important and what we've basically been able to bring to this digital world and then give it away to everyone. Now, countries can say, you know what, we don't want that because it's actually going to hurt us more than help us. Other countries will say we would welcome it because we care about sovereignty. We care about freedom. We care about our citizens' privacy and rights. We care about not enslaving society to be a part of a centralized ecosystem that may be focused on padding this kind of queen or that kind of president or that kind of oligarch's pockets, or even future generations that say, you know what, every 4 years this new president comes in, but the system still does the same thing. And we really don't believe that a vote is a vote and a voice is a voice. But if we can cryptographically prove it, who they are and how they voted, I'm talking using technology. That is the great equalizer that's going to change the future millennium, is technology. And it's not just the word open source or the word encryption or cryptographic or any, it's a combination of all of it intelligently organized so that countries can actually operate their countries on it. Providences can operate their providence on it. British Columbia is one of the first countries in the world to adopt open standards and open source technologies, actually using the same identity technology that's inside of this digital world. The creators of it, Sam Smith, helped to bring it to many countries. Sweden was the next country that actually started adopting it. Amazing. And we're talking 4 years worth of development already. And they're just barely getting to the point where an individual can actually log in, let alone create a business, let alone create an asset, let alone distribute that asset, and then basically share in a future decentralized world. So what if some of these countries that have been colonialized, they want to stand up and they want to say, we actually want to be a part of this decentralization. We want to be a part of the future. And in the technology world, it's actually called leapfrogging. So as there's an adoption curve, you can actually say, we're going to come from down here where other countries may be much better and leapfrog over it. The internet is a great equalizer that does that. Online education, but the ability for the individual to actually self-identify and say, you know what, I'm going to select to do it a different way. I'm going to select to actually say, I want to ask a question differently than maybe a prior generation. I want to learn something differently. I want to act and live differently. I'm not saying that common and lessons learned from history is not good. As a matter of fact, we should actually learn from history. But the point that we're bringing into this is, how can technology impact future generations when it's intelligently organized and given to future generations without human in the middle of it? And I'm sitting here as an individual blabbing to you as a man that's no different than these oligarchs and these kings and these priests and whatever else, other than saying there'll be a time where the individuals get pulled out of it. And these different councils will actually be able to govern what happens and how it happens. And there's a demarcation from where the systems are built to where they're actually built and governed. So just because we hand the baton over and say they're governed by these councils now, doesn't mean that the same types of things have to happen, but there's an advancement. So look at what's happened. Bitcoin is a very good example of this. 12, 13 years ago, a white paper was written, some code was put out, but ultimately it didn't start there. Decentralization didn't even come close to starting there. As a matter of fact, we've all talked about this. Steve was mentioned numerous times in the Bitcoin white paper way back in 1991. Basically doing a timestamp that was then tracked in what we call blockchain today. Multiple systems identifying that the stamp actually occurred and cryptographically approving that it occurred. Now, was that applied to a value exchange system? No. But my point is now is the time, the end of 2022, where we will see massive shifts. As a matter of fact, I would ask each one of you, if you had a prediction for 2023, what do you see coming? Whether they're positive changes or negative changes. What do you see in 2023 that gives you hope or that gives you maybe a bit of fear? And then can you actually imagine how decentralization can be a solution to a lot of the issues that currently plague our technology or our world today? Systems, media, finance, health. So
yeah, well, Michael, for Australia, I see the prediction is they're going to try and mass adopt the digital identity. I mean, they already are starting to do it here. And I love the idea of decentralization and the blockchain and owning your own encryption and all that type of stuff. But what I don't like seeing from their perspective is, like, I've gone to look to see how they are adopting it from their perspective. And I know it's centralized, but there's no information there to say how it works. Like, I'm quite a technical person, so I like to put together, you know, the ones and the twos, all the dots, blah, 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 and like really get deep about how it works. And I've, you know, gone to events and I've spoken to, you know, other politicians, and no one can actually explain to me how they're doing it. It's like all secret squirrel. And I went to an event recently, and there was lots of, you know, different social entrepreneurs there. And I gave them this concept about, you know, decentralization, owning your own encryption, and they all absolutely loved it. And it's so hard to get through to like people, obviously in government and local mayors and whatever, because no one, like, they don't get it. Like, people, they just introduce technology and they think they understand, but they don't. So I am full on, like, I think that, you know, you got to treat your data like it's your DNA. That's what I tell people. So yeah, it's going to be the year of the data. It's going to be the year of the terabyte, I think. More people are going to start understanding and looking for solutions. I hope people are going to start understanding and want to start adopting solutions instead of just looking at the problems and staying with the problems.
I really love that, the year of the terabyte. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's definitely definitely in my world anyway, because we just recently won a tender for the world's largest radio telescope that's been built in WA, and it's all going to be about terabytes. So literally the data comes through the radio frequencies and it goes into a supercomputer, and then I guess it goes back to what Tesla was talking about, you know, in the 1930s, how he spoke about radio frequency and how it was going to revolutionize some of the world. And it's all to do with like terabytes, and I don't know if you go deeper into it, terabytes, the Greek, it's the derived word for monster. So you can either call it the year of the monster or the year of the terabyte. But hopefully that monster will be us.
At least an alternative to the monster, right?
That's right, yeah.
I kind of see 2022 as the year of the destroyer. And every system has been laid bare to the people. They've seen where they really can't trust the media. They can't trust the politicians. They can't trust the judicial system. They can't trust the education system. They can't trust the religious system. All these things have been just laid bare to where they're undeniable this year. So I think next year is going to be the year of awakening. And it's going to be a year of revolutionary ideas and conflict too. So it's going to be a rough year, but I think there's going to be a tremendous awakening, because all these truths that have been laid bare have to be overcome, and people have to be brought to more awareness, and the solution has to be laid out for them. So it's going to be a very interesting year next year.
Very well put, Steve. Becca, Sam. Any other thoughts, feedback, predictions?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Steve was saying. I think it's I'm every day I'm seeing another system that is failing us, that needs to be completely reinvented. I find that there is corruption, and not necessarily the people at the bottom of the totem pole that are serving us. I think that a lot of those people have good intentions, but they just don't realize what's really happening, what's really going on. As you get closer to the top of the pyramid, the other people are a need to know, but as you get closer to the top, they know exactly what they're doing. This is my feeling. This is not the truth. This is just how I feel. So I think that I don't know, in my experience, of one system that doesn't need to be reinvented. I'm working with a couple of Indigenous groups in Canada right now, and I was so happy to hear about their Declaration of Unity. And those were the exact words that these two Indigenous groups were using. One of the groups has designed their own license plate, and they were testing it last week to go across the border, the Canadian to the US border. And they have their own passport. A few of them are actually traveling on their new passports. And I was just elated, and I just hope that can spread and can be adopted in other communities, not just within the Indigenous communities, So I think that a lot of people are waking up, but then there's a lot of people that are, well, I have nothing to hide. With that kind of mindset, and I'm like, oh my God, but it's not about hiding anything. It's about just owning your own identity and your own data. And so I'm hopeful. I think, like Stephen, I think it's going to be a rocky year, because I feel that whoever these people are that are trying to control us, I think that they're going to be more and more intense. But so I think it's going to be a pretty rough year. But I don't know. I have faith. I have faith that we're going to come out of this, and it's going to be a world that we could never even have imagined. So
Totally, absolutely agree. And I think faith is one of the big keys to all of it, because like we've been taught, where there's faith, we can't have fear. They don't go together. And so for us, just putting out their hope and faith, it changes a lot of where we're coming from and increases our probability of success as humanity in general. So other thoughts or feedback for what may be before us in 2023? Anyone? Now is your time.
So, Michael, can you talk a little bit about the weather? Because I've been sitting here for the past couple of weeks thinking, this is in history, this has never happened and all that. Yeah, it's never happened, because I really believe that they're manipulating everything.
Mm-hmm.
I know you know a lot more than you say, than you talk about. Are you able to share a little bit with us?
Well, I think this isn't new if people have done research. There's so much that's happened over decades and decades. And what's sad is how it gets paid for, but in all reality, it ties right back to what we've been talking about. Small groups of people controlling budgets, houses, senates, legislation, padding this, pushing that, paying this, prodding that. Politicians, basically, that make careers out of it. You can see them all over the place. And it's been eye-opening to grow up and see a system that you thought was serving everyone that's actually stealing from everyone. It's actually controlled and creating currencies in their own denomination in their own country. And then you have other systems in the middle of it that basically approve it, decline it. And we're talking the magnitude of trillions that our minds don't even understand, which is fine. Okay, so everything's just going to cost more. But there's some certain absolutes that we have that we've been given that are kind of citizens of this world, birthrights, right? We actually get to live usually in an environment that is totally conducive for the human and many other species to just live. Do we really have to worry about, some places in the world, it is literally 50 degrees below Fahrenheit 0. And in other places, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's hot. But ultimately, we can actually breathe, we can live, we can adapt, but what's going on behind the scenes, in the clouds, in space, and what they're doing, whether it's with fire or ice. Again, there's three different elements that, there's lots of elements out there, but they come in three different states usually. Gas, a solid, like it's frozen, or a liquid. And why does the earth turn? Why do these states change? Why does it matter? And I believe that through decentralization, we have much more than any of the crazy stuff we've talked about. The stuff we're talking about right now is small peanuts compared to true decentralization and the power that is actually within it. And I'm specifically talking about power, energy. And it's not like it just creates it out of nothing. It's already there. Just like we adapt systems that tie into solar power, and it can take something. And by the way, I won't even go off that net, but there's so much excitement when we talk about some of this stuff. But if you really want to learn, I'm going to pull up a URL. And I usually don't do this because a lot of folks just go way off there and go, it's crazy land. I'm going to go to clear.co.com. And you notice these little businesses up here in the top, there's only 4 of them. But if you come down to the line down below, see that there's actually more than 4. I'm going to try and zoom in the right way here. So you'll see that there are 4 that are already existing, but there's some that are in the future. And energy is actually one of the last ones out there. Okay. And by the way, one of the original, I won't even go there. I'm just going to click on one of these companies. Okay. Let's click on ClearUnited since we're already there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the ClearUnited and change United to energy. Oops, I'm off the Y. So what you see here is basically a framework of a wonderful business. We've done some interesting stuff within the power ecosystem, but it's basically laying the framework. A framework that you can see with these 2 documents here. So one of them goes over high level around a new type of power. And in this case, it's actually looked at as a form of storage within batteries. But as you dig closer, you'll actually see things that are natural. Rotation is a natural. Why does the earth turn? When you look at some of these marks and then you read this document, simple 3 pages, I believe that this document, this 3 pages, is one of the most valuable documents on the face of the earth. I would also argue, this particular thing is worthy of what humanity would call a Nobel Prize times 100, right? Just in these 3 pages, okay? And tell you what, I will even drop this document in the chat for those of you that care. So that's Clear One. We're doing Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter just got sent as well. Okay. So that is what we call a blue paper. particularly around decentralized and sustainable energy. Okay. We're going to come back over, and instead of looking at energy, and this is for you, Don, we're going to talk about health. We're going to do the same thing. Notice a team, notice an overview document, as well as a detailed, what we call a teal paper. So this document basically goes through nutrition, physics, and structure. So how are we humans actually, I believe one of our biggest gifts is time. But how do we get time? We get time by the beats of our hearts, by the opportunity to stay here on earth. This physical body, this temple that we get to have, I wouldn't even say control over, because in so many ways it just naturally knows what to do. Our heart knows to continue to beat. Our breaths, even when we're not coherent, knows to continue to pump and breathe. But there's systems within the body. And when you tie those systems, maybe it's through a watch, maybe it's through a ring, but when you tie those systems together in such a way that leverages technology, and I'm going to put this out there, we talk about the year of the terabyte, which I think was beautiful, Becca. But what if I told you that every single piece of data created by humanity today could actually fit in less blood than what's in this bottle? What if I told you that those of us that seem to think, and there's not a right or wrong, because we're on this journey of learning through life. What I mean by right or wrong is there a creator, or did we just end up here by happenstance? But the intelligence that we've tapped into as humanity so far pales in comparison to what the potential is. And through hope and faith, we can start unlocking it. It's just like what this water bottle says. United, we can do anything, right? But in the body, there are scans of different systems: circulatory, digestive, endocrine, immunity, lymphatic. So many systems. People don't even understand some of these systems. Like the lymphatic system is so important to keep our immune system strong. And yet, oh, you got this problem, take out your lymph nodes. Oh, you got that problem, take out your tonsils. Oh, these are cleaning systems of the body that humanity in health just says, oh, here's your quick fix. And a lot of it ties to where there's mystery, there's margin, or it's all about money. But let's just put that on a shelf for a while. We talk about the skeleton system, which I think is one of the systems where truly sometimes you really need that fix. And it's a hand. It's a twist. It's a firm hold. It's an understanding of that system that truly is knowledge that's passed down, or at least learned over time. The respiratory system, can we really replace that? We've seen in COVID what happens when we start using defibrillators and different breathing. We kill more people than we actually help, in my opinion. That's a different conversation. Some of the things I want to say, I can't say because of the streams that we're on. Reproductive systems doesn't get more important than this, in my opinion, because we would not, if we didn't have that, we would not exist. If we threw that away, and look at some of the things that are happening with just results of COVID, whether it's through a disease or a sickness that's been injected into humanity and gone wild, or it's an infection or an inoculation. Why wouldn't it's not even inoculation, or an injection, really, that has actually gone into the body and impacted a lot of these different systems. I'll just say, I believe that a lot of what is currently being issued or impacting in the reproductive systems, in the endocrine systems, in lymphatic systems, immune systems, all ties in our blood, even in digestive systems, ties to a synthetic replication of venom, namely snake venom. Is it by design? I'll let you be the judge of that. Is there secret combinations behind this? I'll let you be the judge of that. But all I'm saying is when you start really analyzing what the World Economic Forum is talking about, they're talking about the physical body and the digital ecosystem connecting to the world that we currently live in, the systems, the centralized systems. So imagine if they can communicate through technology, like a device like this, or a device like a watch. I got tons of them around here. Imagine, or it's even a little injection in the hand, or a little, I mean, it'll come in lots of different forms, but ultimately we're talking about technology connecting in with the physical human body. I'm not even talking about snagging DNA, which, by the way, PCR tests and what we actually stick in our noses or in our mouths, those things are tests. And these DNA sequences, it uses data and MIBs and reports to triangulate who are we? Where have we come from? Where could we possibly go? And again, with machine learning and artificial intelligence, which I believe are some of the things that are going to happen in the very near future. The ability to communicate with the human body. I'm not just talking about what Mr. Musk is doing with Neuralink. I'm talking about simple devices that most of us wear for a different reason, right? But what about a device that could actually ask yes or no questions to the body in real time, and based upon the answers in real time, ask different questions? And through the answers of those questions, for instance, what if the system knew that I was actually giving a presentation? Let's say it a different way. What if the system knew that I was watching something and that I reacted emotionally in a different way than what was conforming? What if this same system said, programmable money is the only way? Where you go, what you say, what you spend, what you have are all controlled by centralized systems. What if that is in this next 2023 year? But if you really look at it, all we're talking about is how technology has been intelligently organized for good or for evil. So that's actually what we're talking about, good or for evil. And most of us already know how this ends, so we don't need to have fear. We can totally have faith. We can totally have hope and joy, but knowing that, and it's not that there's something that's just going to come save us all. That's not what it's about. But by together unifying and coming together, we can actually have an alternative choice. And that's what this is about. It's about having choice. It's not about making the right choice or the wrong choice. There's always a time for that. Because sometimes maybe we learn what the right choice is from making the wrong choice. You know, yesterday we actually had I'll pull it up real fast. It was wonderful. We had a family gathering, and there's a wonderful lady inside of this group. Wonderful lady. This lady right here. She's my foster mom. And she told me a long time ago, like probably like 20 years ago. No, 30 years ago, long time ago. She says, Mike, you don't always have to learn from your own mistakes. You can learn from other people's mistakes. And I'm one of those Nimrods that's not me. I'm usually, I would say one of the benefits of me as an individual, as a father or a husband, or even as a friend of each of you, is I question life. And I would say a lot of things that have changed for the betterment have come from similar type mentalities or people that question things. And then they dedicate their lives to building something that is an alternative or a better way. You know, the goal is to build something that's a better way, but it doesn't mean that they can't take a twist or a change and not be. But the goal is to actually give identity back to the individuals. And so I would just like to remember this wonderful woman. By the way, some great news coming out there, but we can't do that. Okay. So certain things we can show and can't show. So I think the points have been made. I think your predictions are beautiful. We'll go through them. The year of the terabyte. Becca, I totally agree with that. I love it. The year of the destroyer. Can you imagine the peace on the other side of it, though? Because think about it. We're in the middle of all of this. We live in a dispensation that is just, I'd say, joyous. I mean, we have all the comforts we want in the world. Last night I sat in bed with my wife watching news of houses that were full of ice. Like the outsides were just total ice. The yards, the playgrounds, total ice. But yet we sit in a nice warm house, cozy, comfortable, you know, not a concern. And our kids are tucked away, music's playing. It's just, my point is we live in such comfort, but yet such confusion. On the flip side, we've got, I watched this morning a young man by birth who was really struggling through menstrual cramps because he chose to change his identity. I'm talking real pain. Like most of us men have no idea what women go through on a monthly basis, on a pregnancy basis. I mean, I don't know about most of the men on this call or even listening. I am such a big baby when it comes to getting sick. Now, that probably happens once every 5 years, but still, I'm just a baby. But we have roles in life, and as we start twisting things and confusing things, maybe we'll go through pain. Maybe we'll actually see people that will realize that the choices they made were too deep. And they self-select to either cry out for help and try and take their life, or maybe they actually take their life. There's good, there's bad. There's a reason why we talk about the depression the way that depression was. It's because people would actually kill themselves. It's not that gas costs a certain price. Who cares? It's just numbers. Inflation like we've seen today, sorry to tell you, but it's going to keep going. But you can bet with that. You can have hope with that. You can roll with it, right? So if it's going to keep growing, you know what to do. Anyhow, let me see what we got going on here. That's my mother-in-law. Hopefully she doesn't keep going. I hope my audios didn't drop off either. But anyhow, we'll wrap up on this wonderful little video from a dear friend of mine. It's new, it's old, but it ties to United. There were a couple other things next year as far as what the year will be like, but I think, and I forgot, I need to drop in that health document, because we talked about pieces of this. It goes so much more, so much deeper, but this document here is one that I also believe is absolutely worth the Nobel Prize. Again, just 3 pages. I'm going to drop both of these documents onto these different channels. Some people might care, some people might not. It's okay. So you see, this one was 2019. And this is really just doing exactly what I was talking about. We're communicating with the body, but we shouldn't communicate with the body until the individual actually owns their own identity. Okay. So with that being said, once you can communicate with the body, then imagine what you can do with energy. And I would say that because if what we're talking about is decentralized energy, but we're not responsible with it, for instance, I actually believe, and hopefully, notice how when I was typing in there, it came up with statue of, I'll actually look at some images. So imagine, just like the Statue of Liberty on the right, you have the Statue of Responsibility on the left. You cannot have liberty without responsibility. You can't. And that's one of the things that the United States of America has lost. I would hope that this next year would be the year of love, of compassion, of empathy. Because I know that through love, we can actually make it all the way through, no matter what the choice is. It's like that scenario that we talked about before, maybe individuals that just have absolutely no hope. They've made choices to their life, to their body, to their environment, to their posterity that have far-reaching effects that we can't even understand unless we walk in their shoes. And it's not our job to even judge unless we are in their shoes, which we're not. So it's not our place. So, but I would argue that this is true. The statute of responsibility, or at least responsibility, has to come equally with liberty. And it's time for those counterbalances to actually balance out. So with that being said, we're going to play a wonderful song from Mr. Levy. Where are we at here? And Mr. Hi-Rez. Here we go. We'll wrap up and see you in the next year, everyone.
United we stand, but divided we fall. Evil won't stand a chance. We all know that God's in control. All the people of the world are joining hand in hand. 'Cause all of the tyranny brought us back together again. So united we stand.
Trying to divide us brought us closer together. People that normally never, just trying to make the world better. Doctors, ball players, scientists, actors, rabbis, preachers, deacons, pastors, singers and rappers overcoming all their differences. The freedom to live your life regardless what your religion is. Masked up the children, shut down your businesses. Socially distancing didn't stop any sickness. Start listening to each other. Witness what you discover. We all sisters and brothers. You do not get another life to live, so embrace it, don't waste it. Every single struggle that they try to throw at us, we overcame it. Freedom, we had to take it. Matrix, we had to break it. Not the great reset. No, this is the great awakening. Holding on to your sanity. Won't divide up the family. Muslim, Jew, Christianity. Let's get back to humanity.
United we stand, but divided we fall. Evil won't stand a chance. We all know that God's in control. All the people of the world are joining hand in hand. 'Cause all of the tyranny brought us back together again. So united we stand.
They shut down the schools, churches, and temples too. Even if we disagree, every day I'm defending you. Yeah, it's someone else's problem until it's affecting you. All the trillions they send to other countries instead of you. Never bend my knee to man, God is who I'm kneeling to. All the evil in the world, they trying to deceive the youth. They'll never know what it's like just to be me and you. It feel good waking up every morning and being true. Help each other stay afloat, don't let no one lose hope. I don't care your political party or how you vote. I want everyone to be happy with a life full of health. I hope you make enough to find generational wealth. You just gotta keep walking if you going through hell. And it doesn't make you weak if you asking for help. Don't let them tear us apart over nothing again. So let's all join hands, 'cause united we stand.
United we stand, divided we fall. Evil won't stand a chance. We all know that God's in control. People of the world back together again. So united we stand. United, united, we stand. We stand. We stand.
I love you all and appreciate all of your prayers. They're felt. Especially some of these artists in these videos, they got a lot of pressure that hits them. They got a lot that pushes on them. And these people are good people. They stand for truth. We'll see you next year. Know that you're loved and appreciated.
Thanks, Michael. Happy New Year, everyone.
Bye, everyone.